Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out. This morning's coffee talk is going to be delivered by Susan Hoskins, our director. And as you can see from the screen, she's going to do some more talk on historic preservation, specifically on a building that we call the Clymer block. And I'll let her tell you more about it and why it's called that and everything. Thank you, Susan.
Okay, thanks, Treva. Well, so you all, I am going to tell you about the Clymer block. We're going to talk a little bit about the architecture, so that it is, and then also a lot about what has happened in that building over the years. So you might think of that building more as the Eagle Café. That is within. And the second edition, which was in there for over 20 years. So those two businesses are really the living memory businesses of this building that we call the Clymer block as its historic name. All right, so Mr. Clymer, I thought, why do we call it the Clymer block? Well, because of Mr. Clymer. He had this building built. So the two-story Sioux Quartzite building, it was constructed in 1890 by Mr. Owen Clymer. And the thing is, Mr. Clymer never lived in Pipestone. So we don't recognize that last name at all. He did own several properties in Pipestone County, and he had family in the area that did not share his last name. He lived in Illinois, and newspaper reports often on his visiting family and his interests in Pipestone. So he even had his photograph taken by George Chesley. So we have his photo in our collection. So actually, Mrs. Clymer's sister had married a Pipestone man named W.W. Roby. And they lived in Pipestone. She died in childbirth in 1890, and their child, Julia Roby, was raised by the Clymers. She frequently visited her father in Pipestone, but she grew up in Illinois. So there was a lot of going on here with the family. And another of Mrs. Clymer's sisters taught in Pipestone, in the Pipestone schools, in the 1890s. So a lot of family connection, but not a lot of family connection. So that's the why we call it the Clymer block, is that Mr. Clymer paid to have the building built. The construction of the building and the original plans. So, as I said, the Clymer block is a two-story quartzite building. It's in the vernacular style, which means it's built from locally available materials and possibly not with an architect. The contractors were William Frost and J.M. Porbaugh, who was also named as the stone contractor. And those two men built a lot of buildings in Pipestone, so they had a lot of experience with the Sioux Quartzite in particular. Work began in April 1890, and I even found a newspaper clip that reported that a man named Newton Kenyon was contracted to excavate the cellar. So they're just reporting on everything. And I have to tell you, I was able to find a lot of information about this building in particularly the Pipestone County Star. So when I reference newspapers, they are all from the Pipestone County Star. And I accessed it through our new digital archive, which goes through 1915. Then it gets a lot harder because we can't word search the paper. But anyway, I'm going to run through some of the architecture with you. So the cornerstone was laid in May, and the excitement at that time revolved around the news that it was actually going to be the home of a fine new post office. And as most of the downtown buildings, the front face was a Sioux Quartzite veneer, and the sides were quartzite rubble, which means they're not as pretty, and you can see the seams. So we're going to run through the architecture. This particular image was run in the Pipestone County Star as when it was built. So we don't have a lot of photographs of this building throughout history, but I have cobbled together some good images. This one was in the paper, a drawing. Okay, so it has a corbelled cornice interspersed with jasper stone. And what that means is that there's kind of bracketed supports at the top. So this is what it looked at the top of the building, the decorative cornice, the trim at the top. So this is what it looked like when it was built. And then I have a picture of it today, so you can actually see what that looks like. So this is the corbelled cornice interspersed with jasper stone. You can see it's different colors because jasper it's also Sioux Quartzite, but it's more gray pink in color. And they kind of look like brackets up there. It's not structural at all. So it also was built with arched windows with Sioux Quartzite. I should have wrote down how to say this. I think it's voussoirs, which means wedge-shaped, and jasper keystones. So these are the stones above the windows, still there. You can see, as particularly jumps out is the jasper keystone in the middle, but the wedge-shaped stones over the arched windows. It also, and this is really interesting, I had to go out and look at this on the street, so I was looking up, but it has jasper imposts, which they're really pyramid-shaped date stones, and it's very unique. So on the left side, if you're looking at the building, it says 18. And then on the right side, it says 90. And it's hard to see. But when you go out there in person, you can see it a little bit better. But that's, who knew that's what that was? So the date stones up there at the top of the building, when usually they're more on the flat front of the building. And also, the building had double-hung windows upstairs and plate display windows on the lower level. So a couple of things in this picture I want you to notice. The configuration of the storefront. They're on the side, this is the doorway that accesses the second floor. It did not originally have an interior staircase. That was completely separate, the second floor. And then the storefront was centered in the other part of the building, and the door was in the middle. This is what it looks like today. So we have lost, they took the storefront all the way across. We've lost the decorative stonework that was right here above the second floor access door. And they reconfigured the doorway. So this is the access door, and you can just see, and this is a little strange building. They don't have a door on the street. You have to go around. It's like a windbreaker. I get it. When the door opens, the wind blows in. But they moved it to the side. So that there's been some changes to the storefront. Almost completely different. So really happy to have the drawing that they did in the newspaper in 1890. So it sounds like the contract to lease space to the post office was secured before construction, because they always refer to this building as the post office, the brand new post office, and they actually call the building the post office block sometimes. So the Pipestone post office was housed in the Clymer block from the beginning, the time the building opened in 1890, until they moved out in June of 1898, so 8 years. The post office then moved to the Syndicate block, which is where Geierman's is today, just down the street. So as I mentioned, at some times the whole building was just referred to as the post office block, and numerous newspaper references to the post office in this building and the post office block itself. So I have a couple of things pulled out here. During the construction of the building in August 1890, the references, they actually say the new post office block was in the hands of the plasterers. So they were fixing up the interior. And this is very interesting. I haven't quite figured it out. In September, colored glass was arriving on the railroad for the front of the new post office. It arrived by rail. I thought that was interesting. So it sounds like the glass in part of the front and maybe the upper transoms were colored glass, which is kind of fancy. In December 1890, this is funny, they were making some practical changes to the interior. Had been in there a few months, the post office, and they reported that the space between the post office boxes and the ceiling were covered with board. And they specifically say this wasn't to look good, but to block out the noise and the cold from the lobby to the workspace. So the postmaster was freezing every time anybody came in. So that was a fun reference in the paper. So in 1893, George Chesley leased the entire second floor of the Clymer block. So this is another major business that was in this building, George Chesley. He was a photographer in Pipestone for 40 years. When he left, he sold the building to another photographer who sold it to another photographer. So it was a photography shop on the second floor of this building for quite a while. And I wanted to point out that this picture, this is the second floor access. He's got his advertising photos down here. This is how you get to his studio right there. So in 1893, Chesley leased the entire second floor. He paid $200 to have skylights added for the lighting for his photographs. And then in 1897, Chesley sold his studio to H.R. Harrison, who was to take possession in January, but in September he took possession back. So Harrison didn't work out. I'm not sure what happened there, but Chesley remained in the building. In 1914, he leased the entire building, and I'm not sure if that means he bought the building. It did say lease. He remodeled the first floor storeroom after the business had moved out, and we'll get to that business. And it says the new front of updated design, because we're not sure when they changed the whole doorway and storefront configuration. There's a lot of options in this timeline. So at that time, they specifically say they're removing the colored glass, which is too bad. At some point in 1914, the Northwestern Light and Power Company had offices in the Chesley Block. That's what it was called for a while, which sounds to me like maybe he owned the whole building. And then they were moving out with the new tenant. But anyway, the Chesley Photographic Studio was in this building until 1923, when George Chesley sold it to C.E. Sohn, and Sohn in turn sold it to Mr. Classman in 1947. So a long-term photographic studio on the second floor of this building. And he went in 1893. So I put Chesley in here before I told you about the Wright and Sons groceries. They came into, when the post office moved out, they moved into the storefront. So George M. Wright and Sons grocery store. So in 1904, George sold out to the Sons. And then they started just calling it the Wright store, R-I-G-H-T. It's kind of a play on words, a little bit fun, the Wright store. In February 1908, there was a fire in this building. So there'd actually been 2 fire calls. It's kind of a funny story. So there'd actually been 2 fire calls that day. The first one was at 1 a.m. A barn, not associated with this at all, in town, was completely destroyed by fire. We had a fire department. They rolled out, couldn't save it. Had just gotten back in, really from their 1 a.m. call, probably cleaned everything, put it away, called again to the Clymer block. So Art Wright had gotten to work about 7 a.m., and he found his shop filled with smoke. He found a fire in the back room. He called the fire department. Apparently they hadn't gone to bed or anything. Quickly put it out. They got there in time. So later on, there wasn't any structural damage, but smoke damage in a grocery store. So a lot of actual damage to the merchandise. But later on, they reported the cause of the fire, which was, they decided, the powers that be, it was thought to start in a barrel of old papers and sweep up from the store. So a trash barrel from the store. And this is the funny part. They thought there had to have been some matches in the barrel that were ignited by rats. And I'm like, well, that's, first of all, funny. You can see rats just, playing with matches. And then, I'm sure the Wright store just loved to have in the paper that they had rats in their grocery store. So, later that same year, the other brothers sold out to Art Wright. So then Art Wright sold it in 1910 to W.R. Colburn, still called it the Wright store. It goes on and on and on. Sold it to Cooper and Martin, still called it the Wright store. It's a good name, right? And in 1914, Cooper and Martin went bankrupt and liquidated. So end of the grocery store in the building. And that brought in some space for the Colonial Sweet Shop. They were in the building from 1914 to 1919. Harry Thompson and Gus Busses were the tenants. And this is who the Northwest Light and Power Company kind of got kicked out. They were very short-time tenants to make room for this sweet shop. And so in 1914, and I believe right before they moved in, Chesley was reconfiguring the front of the store. So they got a brand new storefront. We don't really know what that means. And also in 1914, they did a kind of a fun thing in the paper. They had a contest to name their shop. It was a naming contest. And so it ran in the paper like every week for several months. And anyway, the name that was submitted and chosen was the Colonial. And I did find a little tidbit in the paper. In 1917, they installed an electric organ in their sweet shop. So kind of fun. And in 1919, they moved out because they had built a brand new building in downtown Pipestone, which is the Colonial, and the eye doctor's in it today. So it's right next to A&S Drug. It's got a white terracotta front to it, but they moved just into there. So that made room for the Pipestone Ice Cream Company. And I have previously gone down the rabbit hole on this business, so I have a lot of information about them. In June 1919, the Pipestone Ice Cream Company moved into their new location to the rear at 114 West Olive Street. So it seemed, as you recall, Main Street used to be called Olive Street. So it seems that Charles Reno, who was the proprietor of the Pipestone Ice Cream Company, he had purchased this property sometime prior to 1920 because for a while here it was called the Reno Building. In 1920, he built a 40-foot, one-story addition to the rear of the Clymer block to house the Pipestone Ice Cream Company and Bottling Works. So he had a bottling plant in the basement of the ice cream company. So this is all just very confusing. It appears the ice cream company was never like on Main Street. They're to the rear, so in the alley. Because it's not a store you go, it's not a retail store at all, it's a factory. I was just recently able to find these terrible photographs, but it does show the building when the ice cream company was in it. So they've done something. Looks like Chesley maybe did this to the storefront, expanded it across the entire length of the building. You can't quite see what's going on, but maybe they already moved the doors. Can't really tell. It's a copy of a copy. And then this, I call it a great photo. It's not very good quality, of the back to the rear. This is the addition. So if you go down this alley, you still see this, and I have a modern picture coming up of what this looks like. But it appears to me that the alley is more of the basement is more of like a garden level situation. They have these strange doors and a pulley system kind of on their second or their first. This would be it's very confusing. What's the first floor? What's the second floor? What's the basement? And then this, I think, went in and probably was another pulley system to bring the bottling out. I'm making this up right now, I have to say that. I'm not sure how they operated this. I've been trying to figure it out. So it was a big deal, the Pipestone Ice Cream Company. So as I had previously found, I want to read you this newspaper clip. In April 1922, the Pipestone Ice Cream Company's growth was said to be little short of phenomenal. The specific annual output of the business was 66,000 gallons of ice cream distributed not just in Pipestone, but wholesale over a trade area. Attempts to identify the extent of the trade area have fallen short, however, with a shipping and freezing station located 60 miles to the east at Worthington. It covered quite an extensive territory, all under the name All Cream Ice Cream. The factory had an expensive, modern, and up-to-date equipment and machinery such as glass-lined mixers and holding tanks, a churn, and 3 ice cream freezers in which mechanical refrigeration was used, and the hardening rooms had a capacity of 3,000 gallons of ice cream at one time. This is quite a big deal. Very modern with mechanical refrigeration. This is 1922. Of course, it exists, but how widely? So the bottling operation moved to a new location in 1922. And in 1925, they built a second story on the addition when Reno reorganized his whole company because he wanted to start making cheese. In 1938, little tidbit in the newspaper, an explosion shook the Reno building. The oil burner in the basement had gone dry, and an accumulation of gas had ignited. So 10 windows were blown out of the building. Soot was deposited in the basement. However, there were no injuries and remarkably little real damage. So the businesses facing Main Street, on the front of the building, they were not affected at all, remarkably, since the furnace that exploded was only serving the addition to the rear. So just to bring you up to speed, in 1942, Reno sold his ice cream business to Nelson Ice Cream Company, which was headquartered in Fairmont, and I believe left the building at that time. During that time, however, the Eagle Confectionery and ice cream store was in the front of the building. Totally separate business from the Pipestone Ice Cream Company. Totally separate business from the Gano Hotel and ice cream, even though Ganos were involved in the Eagle. So this is also very confusing. So in 1919, Walter and Ora Mutz and Harry and Myrtle Gano opened the Eagle Confectionery. Walter had been working he resigned from a telephone company to manage the confectionery, and the Ganos had been involved in the Gano Hotel and Cafe, which was just 2 doors to the east of this building. And I believe they continued to manage that business, but they were also involved in the Eagle Confectionery. In 1925, newspaper worthy, they installed new booths in the Eagle Confectionery. And in 1937, they changed the name to the Eagle Café. There we go. Kind of the same business, but there is a separation there. So the Eagle Café, and I have the wrong date there, don't I? So 1938 or 37. They at that time installed a new large electric sign that read "The Eagle." Was up there for a long time, if you guys remember that. It actually replaced a neon sign that was outside the building, which I don't have a picture of. Both of the signs were said to have been the first in Pipestone. So the first big neon sign, the first big electric sign. And in 1946, Mutz and Gano sold to Stavanger. And there were several owners over the years. In 1951, the newspaper told us that it got a new building front. That is what I mean by, what is that? What did they do when Chesley was there, and what did they do when the Eagle was there? Not sure. In 1961, they remodeled, and they got a new doorway. So not sure what that means. And then it did close on Christmas Eve, 1989. The Eagle Cafe closed. Had been here for quite a long time. So the second edition, 1995 to 2025. Couple other businesses in there between the Eagle and the second edition. In 1991, I did find that the Pipestone Paint and Wallpaper store opened in this building. And in 1994, K Shoes opened in this building. The paint store went in the rear. So they've had some rear businesses there. But then in 1995, the second edition opened, which just closed in 2025. So quite a long run with the second edition in the building. This is the Clymer block today. I know it does have some new owners. They're doing some work on the front there. This is what the back currently looks like. So I wanted to point this out. So Reno put both of these additions on the building and obviously didn't care if it looked good. Did not try to match the brick at all. So, and this is the base, the lower level door, basement door. This is the main floor. This is, in the other picture, there's a pulley system off of this door. And then they added the second floor. So, and I will just say that this is actually one of my most favorite buildings in town because it has such a colorful business history, just been part of the community, some major businesses in this property for years and years and years. I wanted to just touch on the National Register of Historic Places. So in 1977, a 2-block stretch of Pipestone's Main Street was designated as the Pipestone Commercial Historic District, and recognized by the National Register of Historic Places. The Clymer block is a contributory property to this district. The National Register properties, and what that actually means is that they have been documented and evaluated according to federal standards and listed because they are significant in American history. They're significant in architecture, archaeology, or engineering or culture. So properties are actually only removed from the National Register if they lose the qualities that they had at the time of listing, such as they are destroyed by fire or storm, or they have been substantially altered, or they are automatically removed if they are removed from their property. So if you move a building, it cannot be on the National Register because it's not in its original location. So I just wanted to go over that. I know there's a lot of misunderstanding about the National Register listing and what that means. So it really is, I listed some key significance there. It's for the preservation and protection of the building. It recognizes that this is a special place. And it's actually nationally recognized. It's on a national list. There are some economic incentives that go along with it. It certainly gives you recognition and prestige because it is a great thing to say this building is on the National Register. And also the documentation of heritage because we do research these properties. One of the common misconceptions about being on the National Register are ownership rights. The owner of the building maintains all of their regular ownership rights. There really aren't any laws or stipulations put on the property. There are opportunities given to the property owners. So those are the big differences. So I am going to be presenting, over time, particularly with the coffee talks, on our different historic buildings in Pipestone County because they are so important for our heritage here in the community. This particular building is just right on Main Street. We have tourists and visitors that come into the museum all the time, and they're just absolutely amazed at Pipestone's downtown. We see these buildings every day, and it's not common. They're not common structures, particularly with the stone. Okay, they're common maybe in our area, but out of our immediate regional area, nobody sees these pink stone buildings. So they really are very special. And so we're going to be looking at individual buildings and trying to share what's special about them so that you all can go out and take a closer look at the Clymer block and particularly check out those date stones on the top that you maybe never noticed. So thank you very much.
Taking questions.
Oh, do you have a question?
I have a question. Are there any of the bottles around that were from the bottling company?
We have a number of the Pipestone Pipestone Ice Cream Company bottles.
Okay, and it says ice cream?
It says Pipestone Ice Cream Company, and some of them say Reno Bottling. So yes, we do have a number in our museum collection.
What were they bottling?
Oh, they were bottling. I have a whole paper on this.
Oh, okay.
They were bottling, this is actually the start of the business that kind of has transformed into Pepsi, or bringing Pepsi into the Pipestone community. So they were bottling Pepsi, they were bottling 7-Up. Oh. They were bottling, there's one, it was Silver something. They were bottling like a 3-2 beer.
Interesting. Yeah, the photo of the Eagle Café, do you have a date on when that photo was taken?
The interior?
Yeah, when,
I believe it was in the 60s.
Okay, yeah.
It's actually from a placemat,
Oh,
a commemorative placemat that they had.
wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know what the new owners of the building plan for it, or?
I don't. I know that they have been doing some research on the building. They've been into the museum, and so we hope to have some more contact. Yeah.
Good, hope so. Be nice to have something open
Yeah.
for business,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Is the upstairs all open for the photography or that?
So the photographer was in the original part of the building, and I believe that that's an apartment right now, but I'm not sure. And I haven't been in the building, so
Would you say the ice cream was in glass containers or bottles or ice cream? The ice cream is.
well that's glass lined. That's how they made the ice cream.
Okay.
Their churns were glass lined.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's pretty amazing the amount of ice cream that they.
it's a big
That's how they
operation.
keep it when they transported it.
Refrigerated trucks and all that. Yeah.
Maybe they weren't connected to swans, were they?
No.
Yum ice cream, yummy.
Yeah, yummy ice cream.
Anything else?
And the dairy farmers.
Well,
are
thank
supposed
you.
to provide us that.
Thank you.